Chapter 10, Djinn and Shadow People. Shadow people are one of the most terrifying, yet least understood of all supernatural experiences. Shadow people exhibit the characteristics of all the negative entities we have discussed in this book, but no one knows exactly who or what they are. We have been studying shadow people in depth for several years and believe that Djinn are behind them, or behind at least many so-called shadow people experiences. Since 2005, we have compiled an extensive database of shadow people experiences and lore. Rosemary was inspired to start the project after receiving a continuous stream of emails and letters from people who described similar, unusual experiences and wanted explanations. In the years since, she has given numerous presentations and media interviews on the subject, and each time she does, we receive a new wave of letters from more people about their experiences. Hundreds have poured in, indicating to us that this phenomenon is far more widely experienced than most paranormal researchers realise. Clearly, something strange is going on in the dark corners where dimensions intersect. All the descriptions of shadow people given in this chapter come from reports in our database. The phenomenon is broad and complex, and we can only hit only the highlights here. But they amply demonstrate the case for Djinn involvement. Shadow people experiences. Our examination of hundreds of cases shows that there is a dominant core shadow person experience. A person wakes up in bed to see a tall, solid black silhouette of a man in the bedroom. It may be standing right beside the bed or in the corner or the doorway. The person may actually see it slide out of a closet, come in the door, materialise through a wall, or slide out from beneath the bed. It does not walk, it glides, and it moves incredibly fast. Its shape has a form of a human, with what appears to be legs, arms, a torso and a head, without any features. It is as if a person's shadow is moving along the wall and through the room. The figure usually appears to be wearing a cloak or coat, and often a hat or something rumpled on its head. Again, there are seldom facial features, details or colours. Everything is pitch black, or blacker than black, as many experienced say. If the room is dark, the shadow person's blackness stands out against the darkness. It seems solid, thick, and with physical mass, for it blocks out whatever is behind it. Even though the entity has no facial features, the victim knows it is staring at him with great intensity, said one experiencer. The shape had the form of a human with what appeared to be legs, arms, torso and head. But there were no features to be seen. It was as if a shadow was moving along the wall with the shape of a human but featureless. It was watching me. The shadow man radiates powerful hostility, anger, malevolence and even evil. People usually react with great fear, panic and hysteria. They scream, jump out of bed and tear out of the room or turn on the light. Often the shadow person disappears, sometimes into thin air. Oftentimes it slips back into the closet or beneath the bed, or melts through a wall or window. What at first seems solid suddenly has no solidity at all. In addition, shadow people are silent. They do not communicate, though sometimes people mentally pick up on an intention, as does this man, a repeat experiencer. There's this black figure, kind of like a three-dimensional shadow. It doesn't really talk, but it always makes its intentions clear to me. Well, not really its intentions. I'm not sure how to explain it. The thing sends off vibes of pure malevolence. It's like evil incarnate. It always starts out the same. It's like I'm awake in bed and this thing, shadow, comes to visit me. It's usually outside my front door trying to get into my house. Sometimes it gets to my bedroom door. And once in a while it makes it to the foot of my bed. Words cannot explain the complete evil that emanates from this thing. It causes absolute panic and terror, like it knows just how to get to you. The man said the shadow man never physically harmed him, but the psychological and emotional terror took a heavy toll on him. Sometimes people feel paralysed in bed. They manage to pull the covers up over their heads, or they squeeze their eyes shut. When they look again, the shadow person usually has vanished. When they are seen disappearing, it is like smoke or mist. Prayers sometimes send them away, but sometimes they linger, much to the victim's terror. There are, of course, variations to these details. Some shadow people are much shorter, 3 to 5 feet in height. Sometimes they have facial details, usually red eyes, though we've received a few cases of white or blue eyes. Sometimes the shadow person acts aggressively towards the person, grabbing, sitting on, choking, or breathing on him or her. Experiences have the intuitive feeling that the shadow person's breath is toxic. Said one man, "The suffocation felt as if I were pinned down. I couldn't move. I had the physical sense of weight on my chest. My shoulders were pinned down. It felt as if it was holding a pillow over my face, preventing me from breathing. Getting it off and being able to breathe was both physical and spiritual. I was pinned down from a wrestling move, and physical weight on top of me. I tried pushing, rolling, and thrashing about. I thought someone had broken into the apartment and was attacking me. As well as trying to fight it off me, I was praying for my life. I didn't have the strength to get it off. Suddenly the weight lifted off me, and I was able to see my attacker, the shadow image. It was so real that I checked all doors and windows after the attack to see how anyone could have gotten into the apartment. Everything was locked from the inside." The following was reported to us from a man who once worked a midnight shift and slept during the day. He awakened to find himself under terrifying assault. At the foot of my bed was a shadow figure. The figure, as best as I can describe it, and I will never forget it, had the shape of a man. It was tall, as tall or taller than I am, over 6 feet tall. There were no details of features that can be described. Clothing, facial features, etc. The colour was the most unique detail. It would require you to experience it to understand. It is best described as blacker than black, without really having a true colour. It was more like a void of all colour, with maybe a hint of a bright blue around the outline, similar to the colour of an electric arc. Any of that blue I saw was only present as it faded, or more accurately receded from sight. The event happened in the early afternoon. It started as a physical and I believe spiritual attack. The presence was trying to suffocate me. I remember trying to fight it off physically. Whatever it was well beyond my strength. At the time, I was 22 years old and in good physical shape. The fight lasted probably only a few seconds, but it seemed like an eternity to me. I fought it off with every ounce of strength I could muster, and prayer as well. It was one of the few times I was seriously afraid for my life. Whether it just let go or I managed to fight it off is still a mystery to me. I don't want a rematch. Shadow people experiences happen to people of either sex and every age. We have found a fairly even distribution of them through age and gender. Most experiences occur at night when most people are sleeping, but many occur during the day, including times when people are awake and at home or at work. Some people have only 1 or 2 terrifying, unforgettable encounters, and others are visited by shadow people repeatedly. Some shadow people seem to shadow entire families, plaguing them wherever they live through generations. We have found a significant overlap of shadow people and ET encounter abduction experiences. People who seem prone to both. The victims never know when either type of entities will come or why. While most shadow people encounters happen in bedrooms and homes, some take place in haunted locations with high intensity of activity. Rosemary has observed shadow people in her investigations of diverse places. Some have a distinct human shape, while others are more like blobs or pillars of black, and even clouds of swirling black that look like ink or liquid smoke. Who are the shadow people and what do they want? No one really knows, but we have some ideas. They seem to be intensely interested in observing us, and they are not a new phenomenon. Old Native American law speaks of watchers with this appearance who live in remote areas. Similar accounts of dark ghosts and phantom hooded monks going back to the Middle Ages are strikingly similar to modern day accounts of shadow people. To arrive at our conclusion that the Djinn are behind at least some shadow people experiences, we went through a process of elimination, analysing the phenomenon from different perspectives. We considered ghosts, poltergeists, incubi, succubi, nightmare hags, demons, men in black, extraterrestrials, ultra-terrestrials, and thought forms as possible sources. None of these are a good fit, although shadow people have characteristics of nearly all of them. They haunt places and appear and disappear like ghosts. Animals are aware of them and do not like them. Their appearances are sometimes accompanied by poltergeist effects. They act in a malevolent way, and their malevolence, combined with their dark appearance, convinces people they are dealing with demons. However, prayer and invoking the names of God and religious figures do not always work against them. They come at night like ETs, materialising through walls and rendering people paralysed in their beds in fear. They resemble the dark-suited hostile men in black who harass ET UFO experiencers. They can sexually attack people like incubi and succubi, however. This is rarely reported. They do not abduct people like the grey ETs that we know of. Some shadow people experiencers feel the entities want to kidnap them. We don't know if this takes place. For the people we have interviewed, say they have used considerable willpower and energy to prevent their kidnapping. Shadow people also seem to be ultra-terrestrials, in that they originate from another dimension and bend the physical rules of ours by materialising and dematerialising at will. In our initial report analysis, we leaned towards extraterrestrial and ultra-terrestrial explanations. We wondered if the shadow people were a little-known type of entity or race with a particular agenda concerning human beings and Earth. We were intrigued by the overlap of ET and shadow people experiencers, and by the similarities in their behaviours. The deeper we went, however, the more evidence pointed to Djinn. It seemed unlikely to us that the form of the shadow people is natural to them. Rather, it is probably a disguise. The coat or cloak may conceal another shape. Experiencers often wonder why the hat. The hat is usually out of style, like the mid-20th century dragnet or Dick Tracy hat, or the stovepipe hats popular in the 19th century. Sometimes the hat is large and floppy. We believe the hat conceals something about the entity's head, or perhaps it hides equipment. Some experiencers volunteer that they have the feeling that the true form of the shadow people is so hideous that humans would not be able to stand it. Another explanation may be simply the Djinn's trickster nature, the taking on of a form that makes no logical sense. Other types of entities sometimes visit shadow people experiences as well, though not necessarily at the same time. These are often small creatures, another favoured form of Djinn. The following is one such case, reported by a woman who started having experiences when she visited a friend. The shadow person followed her to her own home and began appearing there. Then it was replaced by a creature. I awoke at approximately 3:30 in the morning. The room was completely dark. Across the room, to the left end of my bed, at the foot, in the corner, I saw what appeared to be a man dressed in a black trench coat and a fedora hat pulled down on his head. It had no facial features or any arms or legs, but I knew it was male. There was a red glow, like that of a cigarette, near where his mouth should have been. He just stood there, staring. I felt as if I couldn't move. Sleep paralysis, whatever the word is, I think is the name for it. I told my friend the next day, and she reported she had never had any sightings at her house before. I visited a month later, and again woke at approximately the same time of night. When I woke, I purposefully didn't open my eyes. I knew he was there, and this time I was afraid. I turned over to my right and quickly turned on the bedside lamp. There was nothing in the corner when I looked back. A month later, in my own house, 250 miles away, I awoke to find him leaning in the corner of my room, again at the foot of my bed on the left. The same night, my 14-year-old son, whose room is next to mine, reported seeing the man standing in his doorway. Interestingly enough, the shadow man hasn't been back to my house. Instead, I've been visited by a cat-sized gargoyle that sits on top of my dresser. We have collected other stories of strange small creatures, including one that resembled a cross between a cat and a rabbit. Oh, please call that a crabbit. And a creature that seemed like a mole, with a fleshy claw feet. We have often seen and heard about what Rosemary calls the little grey scurrying things, cat-sized grey shapes with no definable heads or tails and multiple legs and feet, which move rapidly along walls and up and down stairs. Oh my God! That can right off. Oh my Christ. I don't want to be in a world where there's things that scuttle up your wall, thank you. Ugh, that's giving me the bloody creeps. Bloody hell, Mark's out tonight again. I'm going to be in this bloody house all day, all night, reading about this. Moving on. I scare myself to death, you know. What is the shadow people's agenda? The shadow people seem interested in observing us and spying on us. Why do they come when we are asleep? Perhaps we are vulnerable to having our minds and bodies probed. If the Djinn are intent on regaining their place in the physical world, it stands to reason that they need information about physical bodies. Their natural plasma state may not be well suited for long periods of time in this dimension. Like ET abductees, shadow people experiences usually have no idea why they are visited. Sometimes place seems to be a factor, for people cease to have experiences when they leave or change residences. This would indicate their geophysical properties may be at work, creating portals between dimensions. In some cases, we have found emotional turmoil to be a factor. Perhaps the energy generated by intense emotions attracts and feeds the entities. Fear may feed them as well, hence their radiation of malevolence to get the emotional response they desire. Also, the generation of fear may protect their true identities and purpose. When we are afraid, we simply want to escape. We do not want to ask questions or probe too deeply. Fear is definitely a tactic we would expect from Djinn. Are the Djinn working in cooperation with at least some of the abducting ETs? Are they providing reconnaissance and monitoring, or even mind programming while we sleep? Or are the abducting ETs another form of Djinn themselves, as we considered in the previous chapter? Whatever their agendas, both the shadow people and the abducting ETs seem to have hostile intentions towards human beings. Remedies against shadow people. Almost everyone who writes to us asks how they can send shadow people away or prevent them from returning. Even a single experience can leave deep psychic scars and a fear and conviction that it will come back, especially if the person thinks about it. As mentioned earlier, many people have found prayer to be effective. The most common remedy that works for the most people is turning on lights. Some repeat experiencers have spent years sleeping with lights on just to keep the shadow people at bay. In fact, electricity and electromagnetism may provide keys to defences against shadow people. Electromagnetic interference. The generation of electrical and electromagnetic fields of energy may disrupt the ability of shadow people to maintain a form in our reality. The operation of lights, televisions, radios, computers, and even cell phones may break apart their shape-shifted bodies. Perhaps shadow people are trying to learn how to avoid or nullify negative electrical and electromagnetic effects. They may be scanning our brains and nervous systems while we sleep to get information that will be of use to them. Interestingly, we found a news item from October the 14th, 2001, in which a leading psychical, that makes more sense. Why is English so bloody difficult? Researcher in England opined that the electromagnetic effects of increasing cell phone usage were depressing ghost activities. London, Reuters. Mobile phones are killing off ghosts, an expert who has spent years researching the occult has said. Tony Cornell of the Society of Psychical Research told the Sunday Express newspaper that reports of ghost sightings had started to decline when mobile phones were introduced 15 years ago. Ghost sightings have remained consistent for centuries until 3 years ago. We'd receive reports of 2 new ghosts every week, said Cornell of Cambridge in eastern England. But with the introduction of mobile phones 15 years ago, ghost sightings began to decline to the point where we are now receiving none. Which is interesting because other kind of things are going up, like Sasquatch coming through portals is going up. That's just me now. According to the paper, haunted tourist attractions in Britain could be under threat if the number of cell phones continues to grow from the present figure of 39 million. Apparently, paranormal events, which some scientists put down to unusual electrical activity, could be drowned out by the electronic noise produced by phone cells and text messages. Judging from the reactive behaviour of shadow people, they are affected in the same way. One of our cases provides supporting evidence for this possibility. The case involved a salvage company that operates out of a large commercial building. The company salvages old computers and components from cell phone towers. Shortly after the company landed a big contract from a major cell phone carrier, a tall shadow man began showing up in the workplace. It stood by them and watched them work as they stripped components. The shadow man sometimes watched them work on computers, but it seemed the most interested in the pieces of cell phone towers. The figure seemed to radiate evil and was unnerving. It would speed around and suddenly appear and disappear. The employees also noticed some of their tools began disappearing. They would come to work in the early morning to find tools that they had used on the cell phone tower components misplaced or completely gone. If missing, the tools were usually returned within a few days, but to a different spot in the workplace. After months of nearly daily appearances by the shadow man, one employee took remedial action. He bought a crucifix and a portrait of the Virgin Mary and hung them on the wall by his workbench. Every morning he said prayers for protection. Soon afterward, the shadow man stopped coming. Was it religious intervention, or had the shadow person gotten all the reconnaissance it needed? More connections. In our investigations of highly active sites, we have found shadow people to be part of a much bigger picture that includes other phenomena and entities. There may be certain areas or portals where the Djinn can be comfortable and relatively stable, leaving and entering our dimension at will. Perhaps they assume a wide variety of shapes, maybe, to paraphrase the late John Keel, just to confound us. That was a short one, thank goodness. The next one is called They Want Our World and They Want It Now. So keep a listen out for that one. I might do that one today because that's quite a short one. Actually, no, I was going to do it now, but that'll complicate things. Yeah, I haven't been doing as many because I've been not well. Okay.